The Theudrcast is not affiliated and does not represent any 12-step fellowship. I, Bill Ward, the host of the Theudrcast, will be sharing my experience and my journey of recovery. That does include, but is not limited to, the literature contained in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps. Our guests will be sharing their own path to recovery and what has worked for them. The Theudrcast encourages and supports all paths to recovery. Welcome everybody to the Theudrcast. UDR stands for Uncover, Discover, and Recover. My name is Bill Ward, and I'm coming to you from the recovery capital of Canada, Calgary, Alberta. Here we are going to discuss everything recovery, different perspectives, different experiences, both with the people I know and with others from around the world. If you resonate with anything you've heard on this episode today, we ask that you share it with anyone who you think may benefit from it. If you have any questions or comments, please find us at BILLWARDLIFE and send us a message in the info section. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you are interested in more recovery content, you can find the buttons for the YouTube channel and other social media outlets on the homepage, and you will be redirected to those platforms. We can recover, one person, one family, one community at a time. You know, the way that I had my step 5 done, like I went through the material with my sponsor. I wrote a list of my inventory, and then he told me, he gave me a number and he told me to call this pastor guy and go tell him at this church. So I did that. It took about, a couple hours probably. And then I left, and then, I had something happen. Like, I had a spiritual experience. It took probably a week or two, but the experience that I had compared to the experience that, I help others have, they're not even in the same ballpark. Like, I wasn't called out on any of my shit. I wasn't, humbled and humiliated through my step 5. I just read it out like a confession. I think the bonus that I had about me and my life is I wanted to change super bad, and I knew I could change, and I gave everything I had to the program to change because I couldn't keep on living the way I was living. For one, I knew I would pick up again, and for two, I didn't want to live like that anymore. And going through the process of the 3 and mostly the 4, I realized I didn't have to live like that anymore. So I got excited that there was a new way of life. And I didn't understand the program at all because I was brand new and I was going through the steps. But there was something about the step 7 that I felt inside me that I knew that, this point of this program, the step 7 thing, and I had no idea where this came from. But I knew this was a game changer step. And, almost 8 years later, that was the truth. Typically, though, I would say that step 6 is the game changer step. But step 7 is the commitment to Creator, right? Step 6 is the willingness to try over and over. And step 7 is the game of God, essentially. And, the way that I do step 5s with my sponsees today is they write out a list of their grosser handicaps based on the material in the big book. And then they sit down in front of me. We ask God to come in and join us. I ask God to direct my thoughts, actions, and intuitions. And they start reading. And I always get them to start with their family, their mom and their dad, and their brothers and sisters, because they're usually at the top of the list. And then I ask about 3 million questions about how they were raised. What was their mom like? What was their dad like? How was the brother and the sister? How did they interact with mom and dad? And, how did the siblings get along? And how did mom get raised? And how were the grandparents? And, I spend 2 or 3 hours asking about the family before I even really bust into the material of the resentments and the rest of the step 5. because I find almost everything can be tied back. And through the 5 process, yeah, I need to find their grosser handicaps and show them the truth of what and who the fuck they are. But I also need to produce forgiveness for the people in their past. And really at the end of the 5, it's about forgiveness. And it's about, if you continue to live like this and continue to hurt people, the chances are you will fucking drink again. When we do the step 4, it talks about being convinced that self has manifested itself in various ways is what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestations. So in that first step 4, I'm only considering common manifestations of self. I'm not even really digging into what the fucking roots are. I'm just looking at some surface shit. And when you look at the first paragraph in the step 5, it talks about ascertaining in a rough way what the trouble is. So I'm only looking at common shit, and I'm only ascertaining in a rough way what the trouble is. What about the deeper than rough way? What about the uncommon shit? That only comes through time. And that's the shit where I'm getting down to the root, right? Because we all focus in that step 4 on the 4th column. What was my part? But after you're in this program for a while, the 4th column isn't the most important. Sure, it's important, but the 3rd column becomes ultimately important because that's where the roots are. In the step 3, where it talks about the problems we think arise out of ourselves, the problems that I act out in are actually arising from deep down within. They're rising out of myself. And then they come out in these behaviors. So if I'm only looking at the behaviors and I'm not looking at the root, then I'm going to be missing the mark as I try to achieve long-term sobriety. And the thing about long-term sobriety is a lot of people can get a year or 2, but if you just keep doing the same basic program in year 3 and year 4, you're not able to deal with the shit when the shit comes up, and the shit will fucking deal with you. Because the clean inner house and looking for the root and continually growing and understanding and effectiveness is a key component to this whole fucking deal. And you got to grow, and you got to unlearn, and you got to get to the root. And the root is fucking hard to get to. It takes years. Grieving and loss and, all that kind of shit, digging up shame and guilt, that shit doesn't come up right away. That shit ain't coming up for years. And you got to be ready for when that shit comes up. And you got to be able to feel that shit coming up. And you got to be able to process that shit coming up. You can't hide from it. In that step 2 proposition, as we became alcoholic, crushed by a self-imposed crisis that we could no longer postpone, we had to fearlessly face the proposition that God is everything or He's nothing. I fucking finally get crushed by my own self-imposed crises all the way through recovery. If I keep using defects and not fucking trying to use God to help me fix them, I will be crushed by my defects of character, and they will self-impose themselves on me, and I will fucking hurt myself again. And I will continually be beaten by my own self-imposed crisis, whether it's self-pity, whether it's anger, whether it's lust, whether it's avoidance. And going to that topic about intellect, human intellect, or God knowledge, in the step 10, it talks very clearly about that. And it talks about it in the fears too. Self-reliance or God-reliance. But in the step 10, it talks about much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. It's God who has all knowledge and power. And much has already been said about receiving that strength, inspiration, and direction from the one who has all knowledge and power. And if we have followed the directions carefully, we will feel the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, it says. But that is not all. We need more action. The next step suggests step 11. So in the step 10 process, I'm continually clearing out the channel. The step 10 process isn't something that I fucking just guess on what it is. The step 10 process in the big book is critical for me clearing the channel. Because all through my life, I can rely on my intuition, but my intuition is based in fear. and old fucking things that have happened that I don't want to go do. So my intuition says, don't go there. But it's not based in intuition because it's not based in love. It's based in fear. So as you grow in this program, there's a fine line between trauma intuition and love intuition. And love intuition is the one that actually guides you to the promised land. The trauma intuition keeps you from learning the lesson. And also through that step 10 process, it's like every circumstance is there to teach you a lesson about you. In the process, where was I selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? I need to watch for those things. I continue to watch for those things. I ask God, my number one, to remove it at once. And then it says I talk to somebody immediately. So I got to be aware always of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. I ask God for help constantly. That's my step 6. And then I talk to somebody immediately. There's my step 10, my step 5. I'm doing God's will because I'm not running the show. I need to reach out. And maybe I need to make an amend in that process. Maybe I need to do something. Maybe I can't see something. And that's the benefit of following the directions in the big book. And then over time, I get to heal a little bit by a little bit, millimeter by millimeter. And I fucking start feeling better. Because the book says I've entered into the world of the spirit through that process. So I'm getting closer to God. Why? Because the problem of self in the moment is being sacrificed. So faith alone is insufficient. To be vital must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action. The moment is where I can self-sacrifice. Normally we will sit there and intellectualize, okay, I'm going to do this. That's a sacrifice of self, and then I move on. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about in these moments where we're twisted up. And we can fucking use the process to untwist and heal a little bit. And once we get good at that, then the promises of step 10 come. We have ceased fighting anything or anyone, because all the fights that I ever have in my life aren't with you. They look like it and society tells me it's with you, but the fight is with me. So I quit fighting everything and everyone. I quit fighting me, and when I quit fighting me, I quit fighting you. And then I'm placed in that position of neutrality, safe and protected within me. And then when I'm okay and I'm placed in the position of neutrality up here where the problem centers, I can put myself in my fellow society and be placed in a position of neutrality there too. And it says the problem has been removed, and I haven't even sworn off. That's the miracle of it. Because when I follow the processes, I no longer need to use the ego to try to figure the shit out. I just do what it says, and the principles are the result. And I don't need to go practice the principles and self-will the principles into my life either. I follow the processes. The only problem with following the processes is you might not get what the fuck it is you want. Well, doesn't it say that in step 3? Are these not the things that he wants? It's the things that we want that we're trying to turn over. Because we're always trying to grasp and pry and take and snatch to make us happy on the inside. But it never fucking worked. That's why in step 3 it says we are victims of the delusion that we can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if we only manage it well. It's a delusion. And yeah, we are victims. And learning how to relinquish that grabbing, snatching, prying, and taking only comes through the clear-cut directions. And when you follow those directions, the results are the spiritual principles. And then what happens is you get a clear mind, you get clarity. And through all of that clarity, then that's why you can develop this vital sixth sense, and you can go in step 11. And step 11 is no longer a step where I just sit there with fucking my thoughts racing and I pretend like I'm meditating. I can actually have a clear mind, and I can call on God's real power to help me fucking move forward in my life. And I can have something different operating my life. And it only comes with practice and time and understanding of the big book. It doesn't come through a theoretical idea or an opinion of the big book. It comes through following the big book. Comes through doing these altruistic actions. And I'm going to read one more thing before I shut up. In the chapter Working with Others, and in the big book, it says working with others is paramount to my recovery. It's the number one thing that talks about in the doctor's opinion on the first page as part of my recovery, right? And then it says, never avoid these responsibilities, but be sure you are doing the right thing if you assume them. Helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. You must act the Good Samaritan every day if need be. It might mean the loss of many nights' sleep, great interference to your pleasures, interruptions to your business. This is a path that we go into that we might be disturbed in our day-to-day lives. But through these altruistic actions and fucking doing something good for other people, you gain humility, and you gain in the process of self-reflection of another human being that you are looking at you and speaking to you, because that is you. And you get to see why they are like that, because you're like that. And then your heart opens, and then you have acceptance, and you cease fighting anything and everyone, and you fucking heal along that journey too. Thank you for tuning in to the Theudrcast. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. The viewpoints and the opinions expressed today were solely of the individual sharing them. If you resonated with this episode, please follow us and share this link with anyone that may benefit from it. Please visit us at BILLWARDLIFE to see everything that we have going on. We can recover. One person, one family, one community at a time.